So thank you to each and all of you who have chosen to come be with us today and as part of this spiritual community. We know in this virtual world you have lots of choices, and we're delighted you chose to spend your time with us today. And we've entered a new month, October, with a new theme and a new book study. When we released the education survey earlier this year, in the newsletter, one of the questions that we asked was whether or not there was any interest in a prosperity series. Honestly, there wasn't a lot of interest, but what interest there was leaned towards the smaller, shorter books that could be read and digested quickly. Edwene Gaines' Four Spiritual Laws of Prosperity was the most concise book on the list, and is actually quite a dynamic little book. And, this is the great news, she wrote directly and specifically about money for just 1 week. And all the other weeks were about goal setting, forgiveness and worthiness, and discovering and exploring your divine purpose. So I'm going to be working my way through Edwene's book this month. And we'll start a Wednesday book study this week, Wednesday night on this Zoom channel at 5:30, to see if anybody's interested in doing a more in-depth look at this material and discussing it. We'll do it this week, see who shows up, see if it's something we want to continue or not. You know, it's choice always, right? So I don't know how many of you were here when Edwene visited us. She started her talk that day, like she does almost all of her talks about prosperity, by saying, "My name is Edwene Gaines, and I am a woman of power." Every time she says those words, on every recording and in person, you could tell that she meant every single word. She then went on to describe how that hadn't always been true, and what she did to move her mindset from a pattern of deficiency, lack, and perpetual hard times to one of living in total abundance and prosperity. And in her introduction, she defines true prosperity as a vitally active physical body, providing a comfortable worldly home for the spiritual beings we are. 2, relationships that are satisfying, nurturing, honest, and work all the time. 3, work we love so much that it's not work, it's play. And 4, all the money we can spend. So if you were nodding your head along with me with everything till I got to number 4, you're in good company, because a lot of people have that same reaction. If you watched the link that was in last week's newsletter of her speaking at CSL Dallas, you've already heard Edwene's story. And some of you may have heard her speak at other times or heard her when she was with us. Edwene's story was primarily that she didn't feel supported in her life in any way, shape, or form. And she had a lot of good evidence, a lot of experience, a lot of proof that she wasn't supported. Now, she had a very strong fundamentalist Christian background that honestly looked like mine. And, just like me, she walked away from all forms of organized religion for the longest time, because they kept telling her that she was a worthless worm of the dust. And on some deep down level, she knew that wasn't right. Still, she absorbed that deficiency or lack consciousness from that teaching, and it showed up for her mostly as financial insecurity. One day, sitting on the floor in tears, surrounded by bills she couldn't pay, she got angry at her current definition of God and demanded to know what she was missing. Be careful when you demand. Here's what she wrote, paraphrasing what she'd said at the time. Now see here, God, I believe that Jesus meant that stuff that he said, I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly. I don't think he lied to us. But obviously I'm not living abundantly. Show me how. Then she got the urge to dust off her old King James Bible and open it. You know how it works. You open the book and it opens to just what you need to read. It's great to know that happens. Well, she opened her old Bible and it opened to a book in the Old Testament, Malachi. And the highlighted verse, chapter 3, verse 10, bring ye all the tithes to the storehouse and prove me now, if I will not open the windows of heaven and pour out a blessing so that there will not be room enough to receive it. Well, you know what she said and what she thought after that. You've got to be kidding me. She started looking for loopholes and exceptions. She couldn't feed her kid. Giving away 10% of her meager income seemed irresponsible. This was a trick or a scam. Somehow it wasn't right. To her credit, she had also been reading and thinking about Catherine Ponder's old book, The Prosperity Secrets of the Ages, and Charles Fillmore's book, Prosperity. She really didn't think God needed her money, so she just kept skipping over the chapters having to do with tithing. But the more she thought about this, it bugged her because she felt like she was missing something. So she went to see a friend of hers that was a minister to ask him why her life wasn't working, since she was doing everything else she knew how to do. He asked her if she was tithing. She said, no. I don't know why you preachers always harp on the same things. He looked at her kindly, but sharply, and said, Edwene, I am very busy. I have a lot of people waiting to see me who are willing to practice spiritual law. You obviously are not. Please excuse me. And with that, he escorted her out of his office. Now, personally, I don't think tithing is a spiritual law like Edwene does, but I do consider it spiritual best practice. Why? Certainly not because God or the church or the center needs your money, but because each one of us needs to take a look at and be aware of and acknowledge and honor where our good comes from. I purposefully asked David and the band to open the services for October with Karen Drucker's song, God is My Source. Because each one of us needs to know what we actually believe and are willing to practice about where the source of our good actually is. If God is my source and God is unlimited, abundance, possibility, prosperity, all of those things, if I am connected to that, then I feel more at ease, more comfortable sharing from that abundance because I know that there's more behind that. And those of you that have been around a lot know that I very seldom talk about money or tithing. In fact, I dislike talking about this topic, though I have a personal practice of being a tither, and I have for years. I figure this is a decision between an individual and their God of their understanding, and it's truly none of my business. What I've come to realize in studying and thinking about this reminder since I set up the series of talks middle of September is I'm doing a disservice to the congregants and to the people who watch this later by not pointing out that if we don't know, and if we don't show that we know that God is our source, we're actually interfering, and we're limiting, and we're interrupting our own experience of good. And as with every other spiritual practice, the only person we're convincing is ourselves. And until we believe it, and there's nothing in us that argues against it, we can't experience it. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about health. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about satisfying relationships. It doesn't matter whether we're talking about prosperity. As long as I don't think I can have it, I can't. The same is true about abundance, about prosperity. So yesterday, Dr. Christian at Seaside Encinitas, California, posted a piece called God as Your Senior Partner. This is what he wrote. A well-run business includes senior partners who have experience, longevity, and the desire to grow the business for the good of the clients, employees, and themselves. These are the people to whom the company turns to in a pinch, in a crisis, or in a time of growth and expansion, trusting that the senior partners have the knowledge, skills, and vision to move things along. If you think of your life as a well-run business, who can you rely on in a pinch or a crisis? Who in your life has the experience, longevity, skills, knowledge, vision, and desire to help you grow? In whom can you place your faith and trust, knowing they will help you weather challenge or forge prosperously ahead into your future? With God as your senior partner, you have the wisdom of the ages, the knowledge of the infinite presence, the skills and experience of the universal principle and law, and the vision and desire to grow and expand life itself. So Edwene's perspective, Mary Morrissey's perspective, Eric Butterworth's perspective, Dr. Christian's perspective, Catherine Ponder's perspective, Diane Harmony's perspective, the list goes on, my perspective, and the perspective already held and practiced by some folks on this call in this center is that we remember and act like God is our senior partner. And when we do this, we stay in the circle, like I said in the meditation this morning, and our lives work better. Why? Because we let ourselves be aware that we live our lives in faith and trust, and that we know, and we've proven to ourselves over and over and over again, that we recognize God as our senior partner. On that we trust, and on that we can depend, regardless of what's happening around us in the world of form. Once again, right? Simple, but not easy. So a question, what is prosperity for you anyway? For me, it's a personal, internalized experience of abundance. For Edwene, it looks like vital health, satisfying relationships, enjoyable work, and all the money she can spend. Do you know when she flew from center to center to center, she only traveled first class? She only stayed in the very best place in town. Because that was her mindset, and that was her contractual expectation with any center where she came and talked, including ours. That was how she rolled. That was how she lived. That was what she taught, because she recognized God as her senior partner. She could have the life, vital health, satisfying relationships, enjoyable work, and all the money she could spend. So, what does this quality of abundance look like for you? We talk about stars in the sky, grains of sand in the desert, when we talk about abundance. I jokingly call the never ending supply of dust bunnies underneath my bed as apparently abundant. But seriously, what does living a life of abundance look like for you? Finally, here at the end, I get to my talk title and today's spiritual thought that I read earlier. What is your capital T truth? And then the description of my talk. Each one of us gets to decide whether we live in a world of limitless abundance or whether we live in a world of lack. We get to prove to ourselves by our decisions and our actions what we believe about our access to abundant good. And then today's spiritual thought from Dr. Ernest Holmes, Science of Mind, page 459. God wills us to have everything. As we express life, we fulfill God's law of abundance. But we do this only as we realize there is good enough to go around, only as we know that all of God's gifts are given as freely and fully as the air and the sunshine, alike to all. What is your capital T truth with respect to accessing and expressing or demonstrating all the abundance of the universe? If you believe you live in an abundant universe and there is plenty to go around and infinitely more good available, how will you act? How will you be? How will you live? I bet you will be open-hearted and generous and giving. I bet you will live full of expression of this good life. This point of view supports living in flow. Flow only happens when there's movement. Anytime we stop or guard or protect or hoard or hide, we stop the flow and we stagnate. And stagnation does not support life. In Living the Science of Mind, Holmes has a little chapter that starts on page 23. I think it's called something like Let God Do It. But he wrote, in the Colorado Rockies, there's a beautiful valley from which many fountains gush forth. Each fountain is different. More water comes from some than others, but there is only one body of water at a deep subterranean level, which flows through each one of them. He goes on to say each one of us is a unique fountain, powered entirely by our God nature. And because we have free will, we can inhibit, block, slow, and limit this God expression as us. We do this by doubting, by being anxious, by being jealous, by living in unforgiveness, by being frustrated and insecure, by needing to control. Yeah, you get the picture. We are also the only ones that can release our flow by choosing to engage with life as though life were for our benefit and for the benefit of all, which it is. By releasing our flow and refusing to engage with limitation and negativity of any form, we live, and we live fully and freely and joyfully. On page 24, Holmes wrote, clear your mind of everything that doubts the existence of God. Live as though love were the great reality. Bless and curse not, and then accept and let. That's a very tall order, and it's within reach of every single individual. Beginning on page 26 of the same chapter, Holmes tells the rest of the story. But there is one thing we must remember. It is not enough to know that the fountain of our existence begins way up in the high mountains, into which the hand of God pours the eternal waters of life. For this is our inlet to the divine. The inlet is forever established. We have to be certain we are an outlet of it. It is only as we do that the water flows. We must forgive if we wish to be forgiven. We must love if we wish to be loved. We must make others happy if we would be happy. We must give if we wish to receive. Sometimes we hug our good too closely to ourselves, not being willing to cast it on the four winds of heaven, lest it not return. But Jesus said, the very act of giving will at the same time bring to us a receiving. Good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, he called it. The one who gives the most gets the most. So let us learn to draw this divine substance down into our lives, and as freely as it has been given to us, let us give it to others. Then we will be made whole. There's a lot more here to talk about, obviously. So if you're interested in continuing the conversation, go find your old copy of Edwene's book, or pick up a copy or get it on Kindle, and read part 1. And then show up on this Zoom room on Wednesday night at 5:30, and let's talk. But for now, consider the gift that you are, and the many gifts you've already received, time, talent, and treasure, and decide to share them, and then do that. And in doing so, you bless yourself, and you bless all of us. So I want to roll straight into our affirmative prayer. So if I've said something useful to you that you'd like to remember to expand on in your life, hold that in your consciousness while I speak the words. In this space of remembering that whole and holy presence that spins the planets and beats our hearts, that provides endless opportunities and the love to make them happen, I remember this one mind, this one life that lives as me and lives as each beloved here. And I know that each and all have the continuous opportunity to live a more expansive life, to experience and share more good, more life, more light, more joy, more peace, more harmony, to experience more order and more abundance. So I remember this truth for myself and for each one, and I know that every single being already has access to this fountain of goodness, this fountain of life. And each one already is that inlet and is in charge of the outlet that comes in their presence, in their opportunity to express this goodness as them. So I celebrate this opportunity to remember, to share, to gather and know. And I celebrate this opportunity to explore possibilities and to step into an experience of greater good. I know this as truth for me and for each individual, and I know each already as blessed in their life and in their expression. relaxing into the ease and flow of knowing this divine presence as me and as all. I relax, allow, and let it be. And so it is.